As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. And she had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he had said or what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by all of the preparations that had to be made, and she came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are actually needed, or indeed only one. And Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. I think it's important as we read this story to remember that these are two women that had a very different type of relationship with Jesus. And we can look at this story and ask ourselves, how does the way that they lived and the types of personalities that they were, how does that affect me today? And can I learn something from either one of them because I'm like them and, whatever. We need to take a look at that. So, if we went back 2,000 years and we looked at these two women, I think we would realize that, first of all, they were regular people, just like you and I. They were no different than either one of us or anybody else in our families or our households or whatever. There was jobs to be done, there was work, there was family and kids, and there was, plans for future that had to be addressed and concerns for maybe, when we get old, what are we going to do? Or maybe there were some older parents or grandparents that they were caring for at the same time too that we don't know about. We just don't know. But as we put this into modern day terms, we need to remember that there was some things that they had to deal with. And one of those things that they had to deal with was the issue of frustration. They both, showed in this story tremendous frustration, and I'll explain that here in a little bit. As we look at these two people, I think Martha wasn't simply a woman that was weighed down by the regular social norms and duties that she might have had in that culture. But Martha was a woman that was successful. She had a position and she had authority in her own household. And this was quite unusual for those times, because back then, you normally would picture, a woman who was, married and they lived in a home with the husband and they had kids, and, not someone who was living in her own home, who was the person in charge of her own home. But, that's what was happening here with Martha. Is she was a successful person. She was a homeowner. She had lots of things going for her. But she also was very hospitable. And she allows Jesus and whoever was following with him, be it the disciples or some other group of people, probably a combination of both, but she allows them to come into her home, unannounced and where prior arrangements had not been made. So she was hospitable, she was outgoing, she had a home that they could come and visit, she was in charge. And obviously her relationship with Jesus was fairly close, that Jesus felt comfortable coming to do that. He felt that he and his group would automatically be welcomed into her home. And Martha, would be okay with that. But also we find in this story that she felt close enough to Jesus in her relationship with him to reprimand Jesus in front of all those other people. To me, that says, volumes about who Martha was. She was close enough to Jesus, one-on-one, that she could go to Jesus and say, what are you doing? Why don't you support me? Because I'm trying to do what's right here, and Mary's just sitting at your feet. Martha, we learn from Scripture, had a very healthy respect for Jesus and for his authority as the Messiah. And she goes directly to him in order to sort out this situation that's unfolding in her home. I'm sure she made the general, grunts and groans and clears her throat about, I could use some help over here, Mary. She probably did all of those things trying to get Mary's attention and rectify the situation. But then she finally takes control of it and goes right to the source, right to Jesus, and says, Jesus, I don't think this is right. You need to tell Mary to come and help me. It's interesting that also, as we read about Martha in the scriptures, that when her brother Lazarus died, you know what she did? She went out to find Jesus, and then she, again, openly kind of accuses him or berates him and says, if you had been here, this wouldn't have happened. And kind of relate that back to where what we're reading about right now. In her own home, Jesus is there, and she's like, Jesus, don't you care that I'm the only one left to do all this stuff? So Martha had a relationship with Jesus that was one that was close, but also because of her personality, she was not afraid to kind of push the boundaries and to somewhat be in his face. Martha was a very controlling person. She was what I would consider a control freak. Is that you? From these stories, we need to apply them to our own daily walks, our own personal relationships with God. In that developing relationship, I think it's healthy to ask ourselves, am I a Martha or not? Am I letting things get in the way, traditions or cultural responsibilities and things that I believe need to take place? Am I letting them get in my way of my growing relationship with Jesus? Maybe that's you. Have you ever prayed and reprimanded Jesus for not fulfilling what you considered his responsibilities? I prayed for, so-and-so, Jesus, and I've offered them up to you in prayer constantly. And, I'm expecting that you would do the right thing and heal them, and yet nothing is happening. And, so in your heart of heart, you're praying and you're wrestling with God. Are you reprimanding Jesus for not doing things in the way that you feel they should be done? Mary, though, let's look at her. Mary was a lot different. I think Mary was very bold. I think she was funny. I think she laughed and cried a lot. I'm sure that she was, respected in the community and fulfilled her natural and normal family, social, and cultural responsibilities. But I also think Mary knew what she wanted to do, and she was bold enough to just do it. You see, Mary, at this particular situation in this story, she wanted to be close to Jesus. She wanted to hear his every word. She set aside, the things that she knew that normally she would probably participate in and probably do. She set those things aside, those chores and all, for the simple and sole purpose of being right next to Jesus so she could hear and glean all of what he was talking about. Well, like I said earlier, I'm sure Martha gave her all the weird looks and everything else, but Mary was willing and ready to let all that just go by for the simple sake of listening and being there with Jesus at his feet. I think we're looking at two very successful women here. Like I said earlier, Martha was a homeowner. The scriptures tell us that she was in charge, and that she had responsibilities, and that there was just, she was a very well-known and a very accomplished individual, as was, I think, Mary also. But emotionally and in their character, they were completely different people. Let me give you another example. They had a brother by the name of Lazarus. And when Lazarus died, you know what Martha did? Once again, this bold woman, this control freak, she goes out and she finds Jesus. And then Martha tells him, Jesus, if you had been here, he wouldn't have died. Just like, Jesus, don't you care that I'm the one doing all the work here? Tell her to get up and come over here and help me. You see, Martha wants to tell Jesus what to do. Same thing after her brother dies. Jesus, you should have been here, because if you had been here, this wouldn't have happened. Well, Mary was completely different. When Mary's brother Lazarus died, these two were sisters, of course, what does she do? She's mourning. She's mourning the death of her brother. And there are other mourners in the house too with her. And Mary doesn't take off to go find Jesus and accuse him or set him straight or whatever. She's mourning. She's having a very difficult time with the loss of her brother. And when Martha comes back, or a group comes back and says, Jesus is coming and, he's looking for you. And she goes out and she can't do anything other than fall at his feet and just mourn and cry. You see, we need to understand that these two very successful women handled this problem in this situation completely differently. Let's fast forward to today, and let's ask ourselves, am I a Martha 2021 or am I a Mary 2021? Well, a Martha today, Martha 2021, would be a homeowner, would be successful, probably educated and aggressive. I'm sure she would probably be performance driven and also willing to break whatever social norms needed to be challenged or broken in order to accomplish what she needed to do or wanted to do. I think she was very willing to challenge authority and position, and yet she was also very respectful. Maybe you're a Martha 2021. And have you pushed your agenda too far and your understandings of things too far at times, in a way that Jesus has had to come back to you through maybe life experiences or through the voice of others and said, what you're thinking and considering right now is not necessarily the best choice. So slow down a little bit, Martha. Your sister here has chosen the better option and it's not going to be taken away. Slow down, Martha, and rethink a little bit. If you're a Mary 2021, what does that look like? Well, I think if you're a Mary 2021, you, again, are a very respected woman. You're not afraid to push the social norms and the things that would hinder the things that you want to do or your own personal growth. But you're also not afraid to be quite bold when you need to be. And let me explain. You see, in the culture of that day, for Mary to, there would have been a group of men probably surrounding Jesus, listening to the words that he was saying in his teachings. It would have been extremely disrespectful for a woman to go in the midst of that group and sit next to Jesus, taking up the space where one of the men might have sat. You see, Mary, Mary 2021 would be not afraid to push those norms and say, move over, guys. I want to hear this too. This is important to me. And yet at the same time, she was well accomplished, she was respected, and she knew tradition, but she also made a choice of when to set the traditional, things aside for the sake of coming to know Jesus in a deeper and a more affirmative way. She wasn't afraid. By affirming Mary's choice, what Jesus really did was he broke all kinds of cultural, barriers that have existed for centuries, especially the ones that were back in those days. Picture Jesus in the middle. These men are waiting for Jesus to affirm that, okay, Martha, you're right. Mary, you need to go over there and help. And they would have all felt good about that. They would have been like, okay, that's what should have happened. Mary, you were out of line. You shouldn't be here to begin with. But Jesus goes the opposite route. And he says, Martha, relax. And at the same time, he's saying to the other people there, the men, he says, relax, guys. Mary has chosen what's right. Mary has chosen what is best. She's going to sit here and listen to me. She's going to commune with me. As we talk about God and godly things and things of the coming kingdom and all the, she's chosen what is right. He breaks all kinds of, societal norms and some of the guidelines or rules of the day. And it really is something that is kind of, escalated and kind of traveled all through the centuries as people through different cultures break some of those norms in order to become closer to Jesus and really to grow in a thing that's called discipleship. That's what God is looking for. He's not looking for people that follow all the societal norms and people that look good on the outside and all of those things. He's looking for people that are willing to become disciples. Now, you might say to yourself, well, I'm a follower of Jesus. I'm a disciple of Jesus. Well, also remember that Scripture teaches us that many or most of the people that were Jesus's, quote, disciples ended up turning away from him because the teachings and the demands on their lives were too high. They didn't want to do it. They didn't want to follow it. They didn't want to risk, what Jesus was asking for. You see, in every way, the things that Jesus has taught, through not only the story we're reading today, but through all of the different scripture and stories and interpretations, Jesus is promoting that we become disciples. And as he told us, if you want to be my disciple, what do? You pick up your cross and you follow me. There's nothing in there that says, make sure you do all the social stuff and the norms that are called for. It doesn't say make sure that you agree with everything that we're doing or where we're going to go in life. It doesn't say any of that. It says you submit your will to my will, pick up the cross or whatever hardships there will be in being a disciple of mine, and then follow me, even though you might not know where you're going, when we're going to arrive, and what the whole thing, what it's going to look like in the end. He says, follow me and trust in who I am. That is true and honest discipleship. And that's the one thing I want everyone to see from this story today of Mary and Martha, is that honestly they were both willing to follow Jesus, but Martha was the one that let other things get in the way of spending that intimate, close, and personal upfront time with Jesus. So how does it apply to my life today and your life today? You need to ask yourself. I need to ask myself. Am I more of a Martha 2021 or am I more of a Mary 2021? In which direction should I be going? What is it that I need to change, or what is it that I need to do or give up in order to, promote and enhance my ongoing growth as a disciple of Jesus? What do I need to do? Because you never just, get there good enough, or, I'm good, and I've arrived and that's all I got to do. It's not. The Christian journey is one that challenges you to the core day after day after day after day. It really does. We never stop learning. We never stop making the choice to yield our interpretation of things and our input into things, to yield our will and our goals for our own personal life. We yield those things to Christ for the building of his kingdom and the building of our personal relationship with him, one that he promises us will save us in the end. So friends, that's what I want you to think about this week, is think about the Mary and Martha story and how it applies to your particular life, and which one maybe you are, and what you can learn from the story about how you need to change, or maybe I need to change, or the things that we're doing that are good and wholesome and right, things that we need to do. But we always need to reassess and to look at who we are as we continue on this journey of faith, which by all means is extremely difficult. That's my goal for you this week, is to review that story, and I'm going to ask you to do that and just consider it throughout the week, and then we'll see you next Sunday. All right? Thanks, and God bless. Tough Questions for God is a teaching ministry of the Rosebush United Methodist Church, where we challenge our faith with some of the most difficult issues. Tough Questions for God is available on Facebook Live, Sundays at 11:30 a.m., or go on our website at toughquestionsforgod.org and just follow the links on the homepage for YouTube or via podcast. Thanks for joining, and don't forget to like and share. God bless. Tough Questions for God is a teaching ministry of the Rosebush United Methodist Church.